In the silent chambers of the human soul lies a profound mystery that has fascinated philosophers and psychologists alike: the question of authentic existence. What does it mean to truly be oneself in a world that constantly demands conformity? For so many of us, this question isn't just philosophical, it's personal. We walk through life trying to meet expectations we never agreed to. We shrink our voices, dull our light, and play roles that don't feel like our own, just to be accepted, to belong, to be enough. But deep down, there's a part of you that knows you weren't made to be a carbon copy of what the world tells you to be. There's a quiet ache in the soul when you know you've been hiding, when your truth has been buried under years of conditioning, roles, and silence. Carl Jung, one of the great minds of depth psychology, called this the cost of abandoning your individuation, your sacred process of becoming whole. And the Stoics, they saw it too. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," meaning the more you conform to others' thoughts, the more you lose the essence of who you are. But what if reclaiming your inner strength didn't mean becoming something new, but remembering who you were before the world got to you? This is where the real work begins, not in chasing validation, but in building something within you that doesn't shake. Rooted in the timeless insights of Carl Jung and grounded in Stoic clarity, what we're exploring today isn't performative self-help, it's quiet transformation, the kind that changes how you carry yourself long before anyone realizes what's changed. If these conversations speak to something real in you, something grounded in truth, philosophy, and inner growth, consider subscribing. It's a small gesture, but it helps us reach more minds like yours, and it quietly signals that you're walking this path with intention. Let's unlock the version of you that the world forgot, but you never truly lost. Let's get into it. Own your shadow. We all have a version of ourselves we don't show the world. It's the part that holds our fears, our rage, our jealousy, our pain. We keep it tucked away because we think it's too much, too ugly, too intense, too broken. But that part doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It leaks out, usually when we least expect it. You snap at someone for a minor comment. You freeze up in moments that matter. You sabotage opportunities you've been waiting for. That's not bad luck. That's not just stress. That's your shadow in action. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the hidden side of our personality that we suppress. Not because it's evil, but because we were taught somewhere along the way that it was unacceptable. And here's the thing: what you refuse to face doesn't just sit quietly, it takes the wheel. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That one quote explains half of life's struggles right there. If you don't recognize what's happening beneath the surface, it runs the show while you wonder why things keep falling apart. The Stoics saw this too, in their own way. They believed in mastering the self, controlling your reactions, not pretending emotions don't exist. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But to have power over your mind, you've got to know what's in there. That means being willing to turn toward your shadow, not away from it. Let's be real. Most people are terrified to look at their own darkness. We stay busy, distracted, overly optimistic, or overly critical, anything to avoid looking inward. But when you deny those parts, you lose access to some of your greatest strengths. Inside your anger, there might be a boundary that needs protecting. Inside your sadness, there might be depth and wisdom waiting to come through. Even your jealousy might be pointing you towards something you truly want, but don't yet believe you deserve. These emotions aren't your enemies. They're messages. Socrates once said, The unexamined life is not worth living. That's not a dramatic statement, it's a wake-up call. Self-reflection isn't about becoming self-absorbed. It's about becoming self-aware. And self-awareness is the root of all lasting strength. Because once you see your own patterns clearly, you stop being a puppet to them. You make choices with your eyes open. So, how do you actually do this shadow work? You start simple. Pay attention to the moments you feel shame. Watch for the times you judge others harshly. What we reject in others often reflects what we deny in ourselves. Journal about what triggers you, what makes your blood boil, what scares you, what you've never told anyone. You're not doing this to wallow, you're doing this to heal. Aristotle believed that knowing yourself was the beginning of all wisdom. But knowing yourself means looking at the whole picture, not just the parts you like, the good, the bad, the complicated. When you stop hiding from your shadow and start sitting with it, something incredible happens. It begins to soften. It stops needing to act out. And you begin to feel more whole. Not perfect, not flawless, but grounded, real, powerful in a way that no mask or image could ever give you. Strength isn't the absence of struggle. It's the ability to look at your inner chaos and say, I see you, but you don't control me anymore. And that starts with a single, honest question. What part of me am I scared to show? Whatever the answer is, that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of your return to power. Stop performing. Start integrating. There comes a point in life when pretending gets exhausting. Not physically, but emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. You catch yourself in conversations, smiling and nodding, saying the right things, trying to be agreeable, trying not to stand out too much or stir the pot. But deep down, you're tired. Tired of playing a version of yourself you never signed up to be. Tired of keeping up a performance you're not even sure you believe in anymore. And that's where the mask begins to slip. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, the version of ourselves we present to the world to gain acceptance, approval, and safety. It's not fake exactly, it's just filtered, curated, controlled. We wear it because we think we have to, because the real us might be too much or not enough. But over time, the mask becomes more than a filter. It becomes a prison. And here's the thing no one tells you. Wearing a mask might get you attention, but it won't get you connection. You can impress people with your persona, but you can only connect with them from your truth. And connection, real soul-level connection, is one of the deepest human needs we have. Plato once said, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." And that includes living with fewer lies, fewer layers, fewer performances. So what's the alternative? Jung believed in something called integration. That means bringing together the outer you and the inner you, the parts you show and the parts you hide. It's not about abandoning your persona altogether. It's about making sure it's rooted in who you truly are, not who you think you're supposed to be. The Stoics had their own version of this. They weren't interested in appearances or popularity. They were interested in virtue, in being consistent in thought, word, and deed. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's a hard pill to swallow in a world obsessed with optics, but there's power in it. When you stop needing to be perceived a certain way, you start becoming who you actually are. And let's be honest, the real you isn't perfect. You're not always put together. You get angry. You get scared. You second-guess yourself. Welcome to being human. But real strength isn't about looking polished. It's about being anchored, being honest, being grounded in something real. You can't build a solid life on a shaky foundation of pretend. So if you've been faking it to survive, let this be your permission to stop. Not because you've failed, but because you've grown. Because your mask might have helped you get through hard times, but it's not meant to be worn forever. At some point, the healing begins when the performance ends. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, but you can't truly know yourself if you're constantly hiding behind an image." Integration begins when you start telling the truth to yourself first. It might feel uncomfortable. You might worry what people will think. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom, is peace, is power. The world doesn't need another flawless act. It doesn't need more curated perfection. It needs you, raw, real, and rooted in who you are. That's what makes someone unforgettable. Not the mask they wear, but the courage it takes to remove it. And if you've already started that process, even just a little, know this: you're already stronger than you think. Because it takes guts to be real in a world full of performances. And it takes wisdom to realize you never had to pretend in the first place. Trust your intuition. Some truths don't arrive as facts. They arrive as feelings. A quiet discomfort in the middle of a conversation. A gut pull when someone says all the right things but something feels off. You can't explain it, but it lingers. That's not you being dramatic or overthinking. That's your intuition speaking up. And the more you ignore it, the louder life has to scream to get your attention. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is always communicating with us, not through logic, but through symbols, emotions, dreams, and recurring patterns. You miss that call, not because you don't have intuition, but because we live in a world that teaches us to silence it. We're taught to value evidence, logic, data, and yes, those things matter. But what happens when something feels wrong and the facts haven't caught up yet? That's where intuition becomes your compass. Plato once said, "All learning has an emotional base." And your intuition is part of that emotional base. It's the accumulated wisdom of your experiences, observations, and internal signals. It notices the subtle shift in tone when someone lies. It catches the micro-expression that doesn't match the words. It picks up on danger or deceit or opportunity long before your conscious mind has a clue. Now, some people confuse anxiety with intuition. The difference? Anxiety is fear-based and noisy. It spirals. Intuition is calm. It's that quiet knowing that doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just is. The challenge is, most of us are so used to overriding our inner signals that we don't even recognize them anymore. We've learned to ignore the whisper in favor of the applause. We override our discomfort to avoid being difficult or because we don't want to seem rude. But every time we do that, we chip away at the trust we have in ourselves. The Stoics taught the importance of living in alignment with nature, your nature included. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." And I'd add, reason, when joined with intuition, becomes something unshakable. It becomes wisdom. So, how do you rebuild that trust? Start small. Pause before saying yes to something. Before jumping into a decision, check in with your body. Do you feel relaxed, or does your stomach tense up? Does your chest feel open or tight? These signals matter. Your body often knows before your mind does. Socrates said, "Know thyself." But that knowing isn't just mental. It's also physical, emotional, intuitive. It's about tuning into the signals you've been trained to mute. Intuition isn't a special gift some people have. It's a skill we all have, and it gets sharper the more we listen. The people who stay calm when chaos hits, they don't get lucky. They've trained themselves to listen inwardly when the world gets noisy. They don't follow every trend or panic just because everyone else does. They know when to step back. They know when something is misaligned, even if it looks perfect on the outside. And this doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. Sometimes intuition points in a direction that doesn't make sense until later, but the more you honor it, the stronger it becomes. The more you act on it, the more clearly it speaks. Over time, it becomes less of a whisper and more of a presence, a quiet strength that keeps you steady no matter what's happening around you. So if something feels off, don't explain it away. Don't bury it just to keep the peace. Check in, reflect, trust. That whisper inside you, it's ancient, it's intelligent, and it's never led you astray without a reason. Trust it, not just to protect you, but to guide you into becoming someone unshakably in tune with their deepest truth. Feel the emotions you avoid. Some of the most dangerous things we carry aren't the loudest. They're the ones we refuse to feel. We bury the sadness, push away the anger, silence the loneliness. We tell ourselves we're fine, we move on, we distract. We scroll, we work, we joke, we numb. Because in a world that tells us to stay positive and move on fast, sitting with pain feels like weakness. But here's the hard truth. Avoiding pain doesn't make it go away. It just gives it power behind the scenes. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And nowhere is that more true than with emotions. The grief you don't process, it shows up as sudden irritability. The disappointment you suppress, it leaks out as low motivation. The anger you're too afraid to express, it turns inward, becoming shame. Emotions buried alive don't die. They fester, and eventually they find a way to speak. Whether it's in your relationships, your health, or your mental clarity, the cost of emotional suppression always comes due. The Stoics weren't strangers to pain. In fact, they saw pain as a natural part of life, something to be examined, not avoided. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He wasn't denying pain. He was teaching us that running from it often makes it worse. Real courage, the Stoics believed, is not in pretending pain doesn't exist, but in learning to face it calmly, to extract meaning from it, and to use it for growth. So the next time you feel a heavy emotion rising, don't panic and don't run. Instead, get curious. What is this sadness really about? What's the story behind the anger? What part of your life feels out of sync? Emotions are messengers. They show up when something inside you needs attention, not punishment. Aristotle once said, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power, and is not easy." That's emotional fluency. It's not just about feeling, it's about understanding. And when you develop that, you stop being owned by your emotions and start learning from them. There's this idea floating around that being strong means being unbothered. That real power looks like brushing everything off. But that's not strength, that's denial. True inner power comes from knowing you can face hard feelings and not be destroyed by them, that you can sit in the storm and still remain rooted. That's resilience. Socrates believed that to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. But you can't truly know yourself if you only acknowledge the easy emotions. Knowing yourself means being willing to sit with your darkness, not to drown in it, but to understand where it comes from, to hear what it's trying to say. Maybe your sadness is mourning a version of yourself you had to let go of. Maybe your frustration is telling you a boundary has been crossed. Maybe your loneliness is a sign that you're disconnected from what matters most. The goal isn't to stay stuck in those emotions. You're not meant to live in pain, but you are meant to learn from it. When you listen, truly listen to your emotions, they soften, they become less scary, and in that space, clarity begins to rise. Healing isn't about fixing yourself, it's about facing yourself with honesty, with patience, with compassion. So let's stop pretending that strength looks like silence, or that growth means being numb. The strongest people you'll ever meet are not the ones who avoid emotion. They're the ones who know how to hold it, process it, and come out wiser. They're emotionally fluent, not emotionally fake. And that kind of strength, that's the kind that lasts. Say no without guilt. There's a certain kind of power that comes with one small word. No, it's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's incredibly effective. The problem is, we're taught to avoid it. We're told to be agreeable, to keep the peace, to always be nice. And over time, that conditioning turns into a habit of over-giving, over-explaining, saying yes when everything inside you is begging to say no. Carl Jung spoke about individuation, the process of becoming your whole, authentic self. But here's the thing, that journey requires space. It requires a break from the noise, from the crowd, from the pressure to be what everyone else needs you to be. In his words, individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. And you can't become your full self if you're constantly living for someone else's expectations. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed in self-mastery, knowing where your energy goes and choosing it wisely. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That same principle applies to how we use our time, our attention, our presence. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your mind or your spirit. Learning to say no doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It's not about shutting people out. It's about honoring your own boundaries so that when you do show up, it's from a place of integrity, not obligation. Think of your energy like a currency. Would you hand your paycheck to anyone who asked, just because they might be offended if you didn't? Of course not. So why do we do it with our time and our emotional bandwidth? Plato believed that order in the soul was essential for a meaningful life. But order doesn't happen by accident. It's created. And part of that creation comes from saying no to the things that throw you out of alignment. You're not being rude. You're being responsible. You're protecting the most valuable resource you have, your energy. Because when you protect it, you can pour it into the things that truly matter, your growth, your purpose, your peace. And if someone makes you feel guilty for setting boundaries, that's a reflection of their need, not your worth. Strong people don't fear boundaries. They respect them. They understand that clarity builds better connections than constant sacrifice ever could. Let go of what no longer fits. Change rarely feels graceful in real time. It's messy, disorienting, even painful. You look around and suddenly the things that once felt comforting now feel heavy. Conversations that used to flow now feel forced. Places that once felt like home now feel like cages. It's not that the world has turned on you, it's that you're not the same person you used to be. Growth has pulled you into a new space, and naturally, some things didn't make the journey with you. Carl Jung put it perfectly. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Real growth, deep internal transformation, often feels like loss. Not because something is going wrong, but because something within you is shifting. The old patterns, the old roles, the old identity, they start to fade. And that can feel like death. But what's really dying is the version of you that was built to survive, not to thrive. The Stoics prepared their minds for this. They taught that nature itself is change, and resisting it only creates suffering. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." In other words, let go. Let go of needing things to stay the same. Let go of clinging to what no longer feeds your spirit. Because the more you hold on to what's no longer aligned, the more you block what's meant to come next. Aristotle believed that purpose comes from actualization, from becoming what we were designed to be. But you can't become your next version if you're still trying to fit into an old mold. And sometimes that means walking away from things that no longer reflect who you're becoming. It might mean grieving people you love. It might mean questioning everything you thought was solid. But trust this, you're not breaking, you're evolving. Think of a cocoon. From the outside it looks quiet, but inside the caterpillar is dissolving, literally falling apart, molecule by molecule. That's transformation. It's not clean, it's not always visible, but it's necessary. And the butterfly, it doesn't cling to the cocoon when it's time to fly. Letting go is scary, of course it is. But staying stuck in a life that no longer fits you, that's the real risk. That's what drains your energy. That's what suffocates your spirit. You weren't made to shrink yourself just to stay familiar. You were made to grow, to stretch, to step fully into your next chapter. So if everything feels uncertain right now, maybe that's a sign that you're exactly where you need to be. On the edge of something new, on the verge of becoming. Be alone without feeling lonely. Being alone and feeling lonely are not the same thing, though many people confuse the two. Loneliness is the ache of disconnection. It's the longing for someone or something to fill a space inside you. Solitude, on the other hand, is a deliberate return to yourself. It's not a gap to be filled, but a space to be honored. In a world addicted to constant stimulation, choosing solitude can feel uncomfortable at first. But over time, it becomes the very thing that reconnects you to your strength. Carl Jung spoke often about individuation, the lifelong process of becoming your truest self. And he was clear, this path is often walked alone, not because you're meant to be lonely, but because deep transformation requires stillness. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become who you truly are if you're always surrounded by noise, opinion, and external pressure. Silence creates the space for truth to rise." The Stoics knew this well. They trained themselves to find peace within, regardless of what was happening around them. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in their own soul." That retreat isn't built by accident, it's chosen. It's built in moments when you sit with your thoughts instead of escaping them. When you go for a walk not to get somewhere, but to come back to yourself. And yes, as you grow, people might fall away. Relationships may shift. The invitations might slow down. And at first, that can feel like rejection. But what if it's not rejection at all? What if it's just space being made for the next version of you to emerge? What if the silence isn't empty, but sacred? Socrates once said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." You can't examine your life when you're constantly surrounded by other voices. You need time to hear your own. The more comfortable you become with solitude, the more clearly you'll see what's meant for you and what isn't. So spend time alone, not as a punishment, but as a practice. Take yourself out, write, think, reflect. Let the stillness become your teacher, because the stronger your relationship is with yourself, the less validation you'll need from the outside world. You won't crave noise, you won't panic when things get quiet. You'll know that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers you can only hear when you finally stop to listen. Redefine strength. We've been fed a warped idea of strength for far too long, that it looks like being untouchable, that it means never crying, never needing, never bending, that the strongest people are the ones who hold everything in and never flinch. But that's not strength, that's performance, and it's a performance that costs you your peace. Carl Jung saw it differently. For him, strength wasn't about how well you could hold your mask in place. It was about inner alignment, a deep harmony between your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and your values. When those things match, when they move in the same direction, you don't have to pretend to be strong. You are strong. He once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." In other words, real strength isn't about becoming less, it's about becoming more whole. The Stoics echoed this beautifully. They weren't trying to be cold or detached. They were trying to be centered. Epictetus taught that the goal is not to feel nothing, but to not be ruled by what you feel. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Strength to them was the ability to respond with clarity, not just react with emotion. But it didn't mean ignoring emotion. It meant understanding it, using it, and returning to balance when life throws you off. Real strength is a paradox. It's softness and steel. It's the ability to sit with grief without collapsing and to feel joy without guilt. It's the wisdom to admit when you're wrong and the confidence to stand your ground when you're right. It's being able to say, "This is who I am," even when others misunderstand or disapprove. It's quiet, grounded power, the kind that doesn't need to be flashy because it's rooted in truth. Aristotle believed that true virtue was found in the balance, the golden mean between extremes. Not too much, not too little, just enough of what serves the soul. That's what strength is. Not blind control, not emotional chaos, but balance, alignment. So if you've been chasing the image of strength, the polished, perfect, bulletproof version, pause. Ask yourself, does it feel true or does it feel heavy? Because real strength doesn't weigh you down. It lifts you. It allows you to breathe more deeply, to speak more honestly, to show up more fully. Forget the tough act. The world has plenty of that already. What we need, what you need, is to be strong in the way that lasts. From the inside out, anchored, aligned, unshakably, unapologetically you. Live from the inside out. Most people don't realize it, but they're building their lives in reverse. They chase approval like it's oxygen, hoping that if enough people like them, follow them, or applaud them, they'll finally feel whole inside. But the truth, that kind of validation is a moving target. No matter how much you get, it's never enough, because the outside can't fix what's unsettled within. Carl Jung offered a powerful alternative. He challenged us to flip the script and live from the inside out. That means, instead of waiting for the world to tell you who you are, you decide that for yourself first, and then let your actions, your choices, and your relationships reflect that truth. He wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." That awakening is what separates a powerful life from a performative one. When you act from your truth, not from fear, not from pressure, not from shoulds, you start to feel aligned, not perfect, but centered. You stop second-guessing every move. You stop chasing trends and start honoring your core. There's a calm that comes with that, a kind of grounded confidence that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. The Stoics deeply understood this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That means your peace doesn't come from the world behaving the way you want. It comes from you behaving in a way that feels right with your principles. Peace isn't about external harmony. It's about internal honesty. Every time you say yes just to avoid tension, every time you agree just to be liked, you trade a piece of yourself for comfort. And it adds up. Over time, you might wake up to a life that looks successful on the outside, but feels empty inside. That's the danger of building outward first. Plato said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." And part of that victory comes from choosing your own values over borrowed ones, your own pace over the world's rush, your own definition of success over what society screams at you. That kind of clarity doesn't just happen. It's built, one decision at a time. So ask yourself, am I living a life that reflects who I am, or just one that earns me applause? And if the answer feels off, good. That awareness is a gift, because from that moment on, you have a choice. You can stop chasing the version of you that pleases others and start becoming the version that fulfills you. Live from the inside out, because when your soul and your steps are in sync, you don't just look powerful, you are. The journey back to yourself is never easy, but it's always worth it. Every truth you face, every mask you drop, every moment you choose peace over performance, that's real strength. That's lasting power. If this spoke to something deep in you, there's more waiting. Tap into one of the videos on your screen. We made them for this exact moment in your growth. We're building something honest here, quietly, steadily. So when you're ready for more, you'll know where to find us.